Today, in the midst of the year 1918, we explore the catastrophes and consequences of the First World War. We will discuss the Armistice, 14 Points, League of Nations, Treaty of Versailles, and finally the War Guilt Act. We begin by interviewing witnesses at the world-renowned International League Conference of the participants of the war. Alright everyone, let's get this shindig started. First topic. Did you know that the Armistice was an agreement signed by a representative of France, Great Britain, and Germany? This agreement ended fighting and helped lead to the peace negotiations. The Armistice ultimately was the material used to end the fighting in the First World War. On to you, old partner.
Began on November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The terms of the armistice would make it impossible for Germany to restart the war. Germany was ordered to give up over 30,000 guns and 1,700 airplanes and all of their submarines. The Germans were also asked to give up warships and disarm all of the ones that they were allowed to keep. Back to you, Neens.
Radical, Emily. Here comes our witness. Let's see if we can get some information out of this.
Young lad prancing through the streets, come hither.
What you need?
Please inform us on the details of the 14 points introduced by Wilson. We hear it was rejected.
Yes. As you know, I was attending the peace conference in Versailles. The idea of the 14 points was brought up. In these points, Wilson believed strongly in peace without victory. The 14 points sought to fundamentally change the world by promoting openness, encouraging independence, and supporting freedom, as well as open diplomacy. He insisted on freedom of the seas, free trade, and a move toward ending colonialism and a general reduction of armaments. He championed self-determination and finally asked for the League of Nations. The Allies rejected all these points besides the League of Nations.
So what exactly is the League of Nations?
The League of Nations were intended to secure mutual guarantees of political independence and territorial integrity to great and small states alike. The delegates finally decided to include this in a treaty.
Alright, so what's the outcome of all of this?
I don't really know all the details, but I know Germany has to pay several reparations. Oh, here comes the ambassador. I'm sure he knows more than me.
Awesome, thank you so much. Let's go to the
We
ambassador.
received a little bit more information regarding these consequences. Let's speak to the ambassador and find out some details about the Treaty of Versailles and the War Guilt Act.
Ambassador, can we have a moment? Can I ask you a couple questions? Okay, so what happened at the conference? Was there any talk about treaties or anything going on?
Indeed, the Treaty of Versailles was the peace settlement signed after the war had ended in 1918 in the shadow of the Russian Revolution and other events in Russia. The treaty was signed at the vast Versailles Palace near Paris, hence its title between Germany and the Allies. The three most important politicians there were David Lloyd George, George Clemenceau, and Woodrow Wilson. The Versailles Palace was considered the most appropriate venue simply because of its size. Many hundreds of people were involved in the process, and the final signing ceremony in the Hall of Mirrors could accommodate hundreds of thousands of dignitaries. The treaty was signed on June 28, 1919, after months of argument and negotiation amongst the so-called Big Three as to what the treaty should contain.
I see. Are there any other important treaties?
Indeed, the War Guilt Act, which was the opening article of Part 8 of the Treaty of Versailles. Since the Treaty of Versailles ended the war itself, this was just a simple faction of the peace. They required Germany to accept the responsibility of the war loss and damage, as it is one of the most controversial parts in the treaty. Germans obviously opposed this.
Well, thank you for answering my questions, and I hope you have a great night, Ambassador.
You too.
After speaking to our witness and gathering information from the ambassador of France, we have a greater understanding of the consequences which occurred from this war. We learned about the Armistice, which was an agreement that ended the fighting and led to peace negotiations, the League of Nations, which was a part of the 14 points, the only part the Allies regarded, and the Treaty of Versailles, the official treaty ending the war. We also received minor information about the War Guilt Act, which was a part of the treaty, insisting that the Germans take care of the reparations from the war. We believe, after receiving more details later on, that the final stages of the war ended with Germany paying many reparations and taking the most blame. We appreciate your time with us today. Have a great night.